All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and unto to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Bakakadash, Barakatham, to the elders and apostles, Wa'akim, Wa'akwaf, and I say Shalom. And this is a sit-down lesson that I want to bring out with the prophecy updates as of October 15th, 2025. It reads, as of October the 15th, 2025, on this Wednesday, Wednesday night. And this is a news article from RT.com. It reads, it says Trump performs authorization of CIA ops and CIA operations in Venezuela. It says the U.S. president said he intends to expand its crackdown on drug cartels. It says the U.S. president Donald Trump performed on Wednesday that he has authorized a CIA operation in Venezuelan soil. It says the New York Times reported earlier that the decision will allow intelligence operatives to carry out legal operations against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, whose government Trump has accused of running a cartel and flooding the U.S. with cocaine and fentanyl. It says report asks Trump. No, it says no. It says in a report asks Trump in Oval Office, where did you authorize the CIA going into Venezuela? It says, I authorized for two reasons. Really, Trump replied. Number one, says Venezuelans have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. And he says, and the other thing is the drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming from Venezuela and a lot of Venezuelan drugs coming in through the sea. So you get to see that. But we are going to stop them by land. Also, he added, Trump declined to clarify whether the CIA is authorized to take out Maduro. I don't want to answer a question like that. Wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer? He said. It says Trump imposing sweeping sanctions on Venezuela during his first term and has recently raised the bounty for information leading to Maduro's arrest to $50 million. The U.S. deployed a naval armada to the Eastern Caribbean since September, has destroyed at least 5 boats, allegedly smuggled drugs from Venezuela. It says Maduro has denied the allegations in aiding cartels and accusing the U.S. of seeking to topple him, adding that the military is ready, prepared for a potential invasion. And this is Slovakia. It's the book of Luke 21, verse 25. It says, and there shall be signs in the sun, and the moon, and the stars. Upon the earth, disgressive nations will perplexity and siege rage one. Right, so that's what we're seeing, the disgressive nations, especially like, Jeremiah 51, verse 46, moderate ruler against moderate ruler, and then nation against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And we're seeing the seditions among the nations and all the conditions that's going on in the world today. That's why we're seeing the nations are in a perplexity. And we're seeing the signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. And of course, upon the earth, disgressive nations will perplexity rage born. As it says again, Trump performs authorization CIA ops in Venezuela. And the U.S. president said he intends to crack down on drug cartels right from Venezuela. And this is a news article from RT.com, especially for the past 2.5 months. We've been seeing, rising tensions been heating up between NATO and Russia. And then while you have the Russia-Ukraine situation going on as well, too. And this is a news article from October 15, 2025, and it reads from RT.com World News. It says NATO hawks itching to shoot down Russian planes, Telegraph reports. Defense ministers of member states have been privately lobbying for broader engagement guidelines, the outline has reported. It says a NATO defense chief has been privately lobbying to expand the U.S.-led bloc, engaging guidelines to allow it to shoot down Russian jets, carry out ground attacks and missiles, the Telegraph wrote on Tuesday. According to the outlet, the NATO Supreme Allied Commander Europe, the U.S. Governor Alexa Grinchquick, if I pronounce his name right, has previously called for a creation of an unified single air and missile defense system to plug gaps into the ability to engage Russian jets. A number of NATO members currently have different roles of engagement in, for shooting down an aircraft over the territory. The news follows the incident last month in which Estonia calls for a NATO-wide constellation after alleging that Russia fighter jets briefly violated its airspace. It says Moscow has said the planes were on a routine flight to Kaliningrad over neutral waters. NATO defense minister has said Brussels on Wednesday. It says sparking at the event. It says Secretary General Mark Rutte says member states are already having the authorizations needed to neutralize any jets that threaten them. We are not going to take down an airplane in NATO space if it does not pose a threat, he said. NATO has branded recent threats by NATO countries to shoot down its planes as reckless and irresponsible, as well as dangerous in their consequences. Allegations against Russia that its warplanes have violated someone's airspace are groundless, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said. It's the book of Matthews. It's the book of Matthew, chapter 24, and verse 6. It says, "Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars." Right, Russia versus NATO. That's a sign of wars and rumors of wars. It says, "Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must first come to pass, but the end's not yet." Right, so it's going to come to pass, but it's not going to end just yet. So expect to see more signs of wars and rumors of wars similar to this news article. As it says again, NATO itching to shoot down Russian planes. And this is another sign of wars and rumors of wars, especially between Russia and the United States as well too. And this is a news article as of October the 15th, 2025, and it reads, it says U.S. War Secretary threatens Russia. Washington will impose cuts on Moscow if Ukraine conflict isn't settled, Pete Hegseth has said. It says the U.S. War Department stands and ready to do its part to impose costs on Russia over the Ukraine conflict, War Secretary Pete Hegseth has said. It says, speaking at a Rumstead military base on Wednesday ahead of a meeting of countries coordinating military support for Ukraine, he launched a NATO recent militarization push. He said, if this war does not end, there is no path to peace in the short term, then the United States, along with our allies, will take the steps necessary to impose costs on Russia, Hegseth said. It says, if we must take the step, the U.S. War Department statements is ready to do our part in the ways that only the United States can do, he added. It says on Sunday, President Donald Trump has said he could supply Ukraine with U.S.-made Tomahawk cruise missiles if the Ukraine conflict is not going to get settled, and admitting that he would be a new step aggression. It says the long range variant of the cruise missiles can strike targets up to 2,500 kilometers and 1,550 miles away, potentially threatening the Russian capital and other cities. Supplies of the missiles of Ukraine would represent a new state of escalation since U.S. troops would have to be directly involved in using them, President Vladimir Putin said earlier this month. It says Russian Foreign Minister spokesperson Maria Shakova has said on Wednesday that Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky wants to use the Tomahawks to conduct a new attacks against Russia, aiming at escalating the conflict. It says Moscow has blamed the pause in direct Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Kyiv, arguing that it lacks interest in settlements emboldened by the Western military support. Russia is ready for a peaceful settlement but continues its military operation due to the lack of alternatives. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said on Monday Moscow appreciates Trump's peace efforts and hopes it can help encourage the Ukrainian side to be more proactive and more prepared for the peace process, he added. Once again, Matthew 24 and verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, Russia versus Ukraine, Russia versus the United States. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. And this is what's that? First Thessalonians 5 verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, sudden destruction come upon them, as a children child shall escape. Right, so expect to see potentially the tensions are only going to escalate between Russia and Ukraine, and most likely the United States going to use economical sanctions on Russia and oil sanctions and military sanctions as well too. And most likely the United States is going to give Ukraine those Tomahawk missiles and those long range missiles as well too. And I believe Trump is supposed to be meeting up with Zelensky once again to have those talks, because I believe Zelensky said he wants to ask the Trump administration for those long range missiles and those Tomahawk missiles as well too. And this is St. Mark. And this is the book of St. Mark chapter 3 and verse 24. It says, and if a kingdom be divided, yourself the kingdom not stand. Right, so if a kingdom be divided, yourself the kingdom not stand. Modern day kingdoms are being divided, especially the nation of Edom being divided, especially Russia versus NATO, EU and NATO together versus Russia Russia and Belarus versus NATO as well too. While you have the ongoing Russia-Ukraine situation, because these are Edomite nations. So we see in modern day kingdoms being divided. St. Mark chapter 3 verse 25. It says, and if a house be divided, except the house not stand. Right now, as we see in the nation of Edom is being divided. St. Mark chapter 3 verse 26. And if Satan rises up against himself be divided, cannot stand to have an end. Right, so if Satan rises up against himself be divided, cannot stand to have an end. And that's what we're seeing. It's the book of Ecclesiasticus. Ecclesiasticus chapter 3 verse 1. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose in heaven. Right, so we're living in modern day times and seasons and every purpose in heaven, which is modern day biblical signs of the signs of times. And Ecclesiasticus chapter 3 verse 8. It says, in a time to love, in a time of HATE, in a time of war and time of peace. Right, so we're living in a time of war, and we're living in a time of HATE, which that's only going to continue to increase. And this is the book of Ezekiel. Yep, this is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, verse 4. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth from all thy army, horse and horsemen, all of them of course, also armor, even a great company of shields, all of handling swords. Right, so the Heavenly Father's going to continue to put that warlike mindset in these Russians, put the hooks and back sheet jaws of Russians, which represents the bear in Ezekiel the 38th chapter. So, despite the fact, despite the fact they having these reports about a potential peace talks between Russia, Ukraine, and with the United States, but Russia is still going to be in that more like mindset currently, as we see in because Russia-Ukraine situation is only going to intensify. Russia versus NATO, that's only going to intensify. And Belarus and Russia together going against NATO and EU and Ukraine and their allies, that's only going to continue to heat up. Right. Check it out. Yep. So as it says once again, wait for it to load up. Yep. So as it says once again from RT.com, it says U.S. War Secretary threatens Russia. It says Washington will pose cuts, right? Oil sanctions, probably potentially freezing assets once they've been doing deals with Western countries, I believe, once before. Potentially they're going to do it once again. So expect to see more economical sanctions, more cuts, and more oil sanctions. So basically like more sanctions on Russia. And then they supposed to have I think this nuclear treaty between the United States and Russia is going to end on February 6, 2026. So we're going to see how that plays out. It says Kremlin's voice ends on options claim that Trump wants to drop out the BRICS. Which that's not going to happen. Yeah, that's not going to happen. It says Kremlin weighs in on options because I believe it was I would say not too long ago. We had yeah.
Who is this? I know who it is. And that's the dude that be singing naked.
Oh yeah, that's R&B singer D'Angelo.
Yeah. He be singing naked.
Yeah, because
He made that song back in the day. He
Yeah.
be singing naked and shit. That was him.
Yeah, that was him.
He passed away.
Yeah, I seen it yesterday.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that shocked me when I heard about that.
Yeah, so back to what I was saying was I was saying about a couple of months ago because of course the BRICS nations they had at a summit meeting about they made that announcement about the BRICS nation having with their own currency because they made a comment. They were saying that not trying to overthrow the American dollar, but have have their own form of currency so they can team up together with the with the currency with the BRICS nations and other nations that follow that lead as well too. And then you had the Trump administration. They were saying that that potentially might be any attack on the American dollar. So he was saying that if that's the case, he's going to potentially use economical sanctions and tariffs on the BRICS nation potentially. According to a report a couple of months back. And this is read that again. This is a news article from RT.com as of October 15, 2025, and it reads, it says Kremlin weighs in on Trump's claim that the countries want to drop out of the BRICS. It says spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has rejected the U.S. president's assertion that the nations are trying to leave the organization. It says the BRICS economic groups unite nations sharing a vision of the cooperations aiming at prosperity and stability, not confrontation with any other states. Or currently, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said. It says, hey, yeah, the incredible orange, Esau Edom, because he wants things to run his way. Because a lot of times it doesn't work that way. Because basically, modern day Babylon the Great want everybody to follow their lead. Because it seems like when all these other countries, they manage their own business. Esau, Edom, the Incredible Orange kind of think that the nations are trying to go against him, his nation, And a lot of times that might not be the case, you know. It's just the other nations just doing their own thing, you know, doing their own economical freedom in their own currency, you know. It says he made the remarks on Wednesday, responding to the claims that the U.S. President Trump that the country wants to drop out of the BRICS for fear of a potential terrorist and sanctions, which that's not true. That's not true. It says speaking on Tuesday, Trump accused the bloc for attempting an attack on the dollar and warning that Washington will impose tariffs on nations aligning with it. Because most of these because most of these nations are not really focused on America like that. They focus on managing their own business and coming with their own forms of currency. That's why you had these economical partnerships with these other nations. You know, that's why you had the BRICS nations, which they formed in 2015. I think it's Russia, Brazil, South Africa, and many more countries to name those few. This is a Peshkov told the the RAA. Rostov sees that the BRICS has never planned anything against any third country or any third country currency. It says that the group's work is to guide the principles of partnership and prosperity and predictably, he added. It says these values are reflecting on the joint declarations adopting the BRICS summit. Peskov added. It says the Kremlin spokesperson has said no information suggesting that any members of the prospective members will reconsider their participation because of the U.S. pressure. Yeah, that was a lie that was a lie that Incredible Orange made. It says Trump, a frequent critic of BRICS, has accused of attempting to weaken the global role of the U.S. dollar. The BRICS, however, has no common currency and will trade between its members conducting their national currency. It says that the BRICS leaders has repeatedly stated that they are not trying to undermine a greenback, arguing that the publication of the dollar process is a greater threat. It says the BRICS originally formed in Brazil, Russia, and India in 2006. Oh, 2006. I thought it was 2015. It says has expanded to South Africa, Egypt, Iran, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, and the economic bloc now surpass a G7 if combine the GDP. It says, and at the group summit in Kazan, Russia last year, the BRICS approved a new partner country status in response to members' interest in showing more than 30 countries. So look of yeah, because Esau, Esau trying to cause that division between the nations, and you have Esau being divided against itself. This is Saint Mark, right? Because that's modern day. That's what modern day spiritual Babylon. That's modern day spiritual Babylon for you. Esau ruling modern day spiritual Babylon. Number confusion, and that's what we're starting to see. The nations are starting to turn from her. It says I think that's Jeremiah the 51st chapter. This is St. Mark chapter 3, verse 24. It says, and if a kingdom be divided itself, the kingdom not stand. Right, so Esau is really being divided against itself, trying to be divided against the nations as well too, accusing nations of false narratives and false accusations. St. Mark chapter 3, verse 25. It says, and if a house be divided itself, house not stand. St. Mark chapter 3, verse 26. And if Satan rises against itself, be divided. Sam had an end. Right, that's we're seeing that as well too. It says Kremlin weighs in on Trump's claim that the country wants to drop out of BRICS. Once that's a flat out lie. That's not true. Alaska process is not finished. It says this is a news article from RT.com. It says as of October the 15th, 2025, Alaska process is not finished yet. Lavrov has mentioned. Moscow is still waiting for the U.S. response for a proposal made at the summit. The Russian foreign minister has said the dialogue between the United States and Russia kicked off by the Alaska summit between President Donald Trump and Vladimir continues. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said the two nations can still do much on the basis of understanding reached by the two leaders. Right, so even if they do have some type of peace talks and some agreements, some progress, but the tensions are still going to be there between both sides, especially from an economical perspective. So, as you have Russia was trying to see if Russia was going to ease the tension between Ukraine, which is not going to happen anytime soon. So expect the United States going to do what they're going to do: economical sanctions, oil sanctions, and potentially send those missiles, those long range missiles, to and those Tomahawk missiles to give it to you, sell it to NATO, and then give it to Ukraine. And this is the prophet Isaiah, chapter 13, verse 17. It says, "Behold, I will stir up the Medes." Right, the Medes are the Russians against Babylon once before, because it says, what's that, Jeremiah the 51st chapter, that the Heavenly Father is going to have his device against Babylon. He's going to use the Medes against Babylon. It says, Isaiah 13, verse 17, "Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which they shall not regard as silver, and as for gold, they shall not honor it." Right, so economical sanctions, oil sanctions, military sanctions, so as for gold and silver, they shall not delight in it. So expect to see the tensions are going to stir up between Russia and the United States. Even if they do come with some peace talks, progress of it, that's still not going to stop the tensions. That's still not going to stop the military escalations, nuclear escalations, and trade escalations. That's only going to increase between both sides. He said, shut up, Pelosi," lashes out at journalists outside the U.S. Capitol. A high-ranking Democratic accused the reporter of repeating Republicans' taking points. What's that? St. Mark the third chapter. If a kingdom be divided, so can you not stand? Because you're still going to have those divisions between people that support the Republicans and people that support the Democrats as well too. And this goes right along with that Isaiah, what's that? Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. We seeing that in progress, Heavenly Father showing us, because you're gonna have the alliance between, Russia, Syria, the pro-Iranian groups all team up together, going against the Israel Defense Force, and because you had, I would say, Russia, Syria, Turkey, and Iran, and the pro-Iranian groups recently called out the Israel Defense Force because they had reckless behavior over in Syria, even though they came to a ceasefire. But expect to see more military front, military deployment over there in the borders of Israel and Syria and Lebanon, throughout that whole area. Now you do have a future prophecy of Isaiah 17 verse 1 of Damascus in Syria. It's going to be taken away from being the season that should be Israel here, because you're still going to have escalations between the nations over in the area. That's a side note that I want to add. It says Putin hosts Syrian president in Kremlin. Ahmad al-Shara has paid his first visit to Russia. It says Russian President Vladimir Putin hosts his Syrian counterpart Ahmad al-Shara in Moscow on Wednesday, praising the two countries to deep historical ties and a friendly relationship. Al-Shara noted that Moscow would play a significant role in his country's transition into a new Syria, and to vows to honor all the past commitments. It says the two spoke at a meeting at the Kremlin ahead of the extensive talks. It marks the first visit out of the Syrian leader to Russia since the fall of Assad government last year. Al-Sharan, who once led the Islamic group Haytia Shura al-Sham HTS under his Namdi Gro Abdul Muhammad al-Jamid, rose to power following the departure of Assad. Putin said that the diplomatic ties between Russia and Syria has always been friendly since the establishment in 1944. It says throughout these decades, we have always been guided by one thing. It says the interests of the Syrian people had said. Al-Sharal said that Syria continues to build on the army, on the many achievements that that cooperation with Russia has facilitated. It says parts of Syria, food supplies, and many power plants depending on Russia, and we're trying to redefine the nature of our relations with it, respecting all past agreements between the countries. He added, Russian military presence in Syria at the Humlan Air Base and Tartus Navy facilities was originally established with a 49-year lease signed. It was signed in 2017. Moscow has remained engaged with the new Syrian leadership, continues to maintain their bases since his out- outluster. Officials in the new Syrian armies have previously indicated that Damascus will be open to allow Russia to maintain its bases as long as they're present and adventurous to our country. This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and verse 5. It says, Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, all of them with shield of Haman. Ezekiel chapter 30, verse 6, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Tokmor of the north quarters, and all his bands, many people with thee. Ezekiel chapter 30, verse 7, Be thou prepared, prepare for thyself, all thy companies that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. Right, so Russia is going to be a guard unto these nations. They're going to continue to have military alliance and economical alliance and cooperation between these nations that Russia is going to be a guard unto. And their main focus is going to be and their main focus is definitely going to be going against the Israel Defense Force. Because I would say about a couple of weeks ago, you had the communications was talks were off between I would say Israel and Syria, and between Turkey and the Israelis as well too. So expect to see potentially it's going to be some tensions going to spark once again, between Syria versus Israel and Turkey versus Israel. And Russia is going to be a guard unto these nations once those tensions spark once again as talks been cut off between both sides. And this is going to be another future prophecy as well too, as I mentioned once before. Even though Syria, they trying to bounce back, they trying to build back, but the prophet Isaiah say something totally different. Yep, the prophet Isaiah 17 verse 1. It says, the burden of Damascus, behold, Damascus take away from being the city, and there shall be its roaring heap. And this is the prophet Isaiah chapter 17 verse 9. It says, in that day shall his strong cities be as forsaken, bought, and the uttermost part wrenched, and they shall, it says, which they left because of the children of Israel, and there be desolation. So with that, hopefully this sit down lesson was edifying of the prophecy updates as of October 15th, 2025 on this Wednesday night. So with that, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Makar and the Heavenly Father. The true name is Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, Bahashem, and the name of Mashak Havashai. Those are their true names in the ancient Paleo Hebrew, Lashmakadash Lutan. I say Barakatham to the elders and apostles, Barakim Hakwa. Until next time, I will say Shalom.